Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Detroit Sports Sit Down. Today we have a very special episode as we are talking with Tony Paul, sports writer with the Detroit News. Tony, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Now, Tony, it's strange times right now. As you said when we were texting back and forth before the show here, you said it best. It's strange times we're in. As a sports writer, what is it like for you right now with live games being on hold, but there's still so much going on and a lot to talk about? How has your approach to sports journalism changed in the last month or so?
Well, yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's changed a lot. Not sure the approach has changed as much as just the kind of, I don't know, the whole vibe of what we do has changed. Obviously, no games. It's surreal. I mean, we're used to, and I do a bunch of different things at the news. I write, I do some editing of the print edition, I do some editing for the web edition. So I do a lot of different things, and we're so used to just being on the go, and one thing after another. Every day is different. There's just tons of new stuff to write about, new games, big games, previewing big games coming up, and all that stuff. And we're used to going 100 miles an hour. We're used to working on crazy deadlines. Trying to beat what used to be the 11 o'clock deadline, and then became the 10 o'clock deadline, and newspapers just kept getting earlier and earlier. But I mean, used to just this whole high stress, high demand thing, and now it's completely different. And the one thing I've told people, and they're surprised to hear it, is that we're still very busy. There was a couple weeks there right after the pandemic really took off, where we were as busy as we've ever been, just because of the impact stories. Sports were shutting down, and I mean, the dominoes were falling, and it was affecting everybody, and it was affecting not just no sports, so the fans were affected, but it was affecting real life college athletes and their careers, and from the top of sports down to the ones that don't get the publicity, but it was affecting just thousands of people across the state. And so those first couple of weeks after this really started to take off, the pandemic, I mean, we were really busy just writing impact stories, and we're still pretty busy. As things are starting to look like they're maybe heading in the right direction, we're starting to focus more on that. We're staying busy, but it's totally different because, again, we're not writing about things that are, every day something's happening in a box score, and we're trying to analyze that. That's gone, and we don't know how long it's going to be gone for. But now, it's just it's a different kind of journalism. It's more impactful in a lot of ways. It's real life stories you're telling now, and how this is affecting people's livelihoods and everything. So it's different, but it's still very busy. Very strange though.
Oh, absolutely. You're kind of on the front lines as far as how the sports world is being impacted. What do you know, or in your own opinion, when do you think live sports are coming back?
I have no freaking clue, and I don't think anyone who's being honest really does. And I think that's why you're seeing, none of these sports leagues, for the most part, are really giving you a concrete date or a timeline. Like the PGA Tour came out today and really was the first to kind of say, here's the date we want to return. And they want to return in, the first 2 weeks of June. And, they were the first to really come out and give that timeline. Whereas most sports, the NHL, the NBA, Major League Baseball, they're really not touching that right now. They're basically just saying it's a wait and see. You're really not even getting firm commitments from the NFL and college football that things are going to start on time or start at all this fall. Because we just don't know. So I don't know. I mean, I guess we'll see golf soon. In the next month or so, month and a half, with no fans. I expect, if the other sports leagues really want to get out there and play, then it's going to be without fans. So maybe a couple whole thing, and it's the thing I've heard from every single person I've interviewed, college administrators, college coaches, professional athletes, is it's just this great unknown. Nobody knows anything because it's just such an unprecedented situation. No one that is anybody in sports right now has lived through anything like this. It's been over 100 years since the United States has had a pandemic like this. And, certainly sports weren't then what they are now. So no one knows. Take a guess when things are going to start back up again. It's awfully tough to do.
Yeah. And you're hearing some of these wild ideas, I guess, like, the WWE is still trying to go on, UFC, Dana White was trying to buy a private island and have those guys. I think that got shut down, but he's still trying to do it next month. But with the major sports, could you imagine baseball starting with no fans? Can you imagine the NBA trying to do a playoff system in June, July, August, something like that, but with no fans and have them being quarantined on their own area? Like NHL, kind of the same thing. Like, is there? Because if people are still stuck at home that far in, like June, July, like you said, who knows? Like, if we're going to be still stuck at home in June, July, I don't think so. But people aren't going to be mass gathering to watch sports. Do you personally want to see baseball, basketball, hockey try to do something without fans in attendance, but putting that out on TV? Like, is there a good positive benefit to that, or should sports just wait until everything goes back to where fans can mass gather to watch these games?
Yeah, it's a tricky situation. Me personally, no, I don't. I don't think it works. I think that the crowd is such an impact and such a part of the sports landscape, especially for the major sports with baseball and basketball and hockey and down the road football. I get why the leagues want to do it. Obviously, they're not making any revenue right now. They're not making any money. One way to make money would be to get back on the court or on the field, even if it is with no fans, because the TV money is still very beneficial, still very lucrative, and so they can recoup some of their money that way. So I get I get why they want to do it, and of course they're selling it as, well, some sports are better than no sports for the fans at home. At least they'll have something to watch, and that's true. But the reality is, I just don't think it works with no fans. It's just not sports. The best part about baseball is, it's probably better to watch on TV. You can see more, but there's nothing like going to a baseball game and experiencing the crowd and the atmosphere and, the hot dog and the $20 beer. It's just that sport. So I just don't think it works. I think with a sport like golf, I think it can work maybe a little bit better, just because it's such an isolated sport anyway. And, I think that has and golf is such a sport that's embraced on TV as opposed to in person, for the, comparative to the other sports. I just don't think the major ones work without the fans. And that's just me. I'm sure that they're probably going to try to come back without the fans just to start making some money, because we don't know when the mass gatherings are going to be allowed. I mean, the governor of California has already said that he doesn't anticipate mass gatherings being allowed at any time for the rest of this year, which would basically shut down any fans at any sports of several professional teams in California. So what does that mean for the rest of the league, which has to travel to California to play games? Look, I understand that it's going to be a while before, one, we're allowed to gather mass, in public, and two, even when we are allowed, whether everyone's going to feel comfortable doing it. I don't think it's just going to be this thing where people switch a light switch, flick it on, and everything's back to normal. I think there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be tentative to go out and be in public in any way. So it's a definite, delicate, tricky situation with the pro leagues. I get it. They want to make money. I get it. I just don't think sports is sports without the fans. And at least those levels of the NBA, NHL, Major League Baseball, be successful. But then again, if they don't try to do it, who knows when they'll even be able to have sports again? It might not even be till 2021. So it's a tough situation. It's a situation I'm glad I don't have to make the decision.
Absolutely. Now, I want to get your opinion on the difference between if the pro athletes get quarantined and and gather together and play games in an empty arena. Like I know, like baseball's talking about possibly setting up shop in Arizona and just playing in like 2 or 3 stadiums in Arizona, and everybody's quarantined. Now these guys are getting paid millions and millions of dollars, and there's millions of dollars in TV revenue. So I can understand that, but on the college level, having college athletes play in empty stadiums, they're not getting paid. But so it's okay for the college players to play on that field, but in front of no fans because the fans wouldn't be safe. That part doesn't make sense to me. So do you see a difference between like pro sports coming back in front of no fans and college sports coming back in front of no fans? Like, there's got to be a major difference there, right?
Well, I think that college football is going to have a very difficult time selling that, because you're right. For starters, there's a lot of people on a college football team, and so there's going to be a lot of people in pretty close gatherings anyway, even if there are no fans. There's a huge liability issue with the college athlete, and that's why I think that's going to be a totally different situation than the pros. I don't see college football being played in front of no fans. I would be stunned, and that's why I think college football could very well be in danger this fall, as opposed to the NFL, which I could see playing in front of no fans. So and then the other part of it is that they have the experience of being a college athlete is playing, especially college football players playing on those football Saturdays with the crowd. So if you're not going to have the crowd, you're not going to have college football. So no. But even with the stuff in Arizona, there's so much to figure out about that with Major League Baseball. I mean, everyone's going to be quarantined. You're still going to have. It still takes a lot of people to put on a baseball game. Okay, and it's still a lot of people from each team that need to be there. It's not just players. There's training officials and such. There's stadium workers as far as working the broadcast and all that. There's still going to be a lot of people involved that still need to be at these ballparks, and just quarantining them, doesn't guarantee that no one's going to get sick. And the other thing is there's a lot of players that are already starting to resist that idea, saying they're not going to leave their families if this pandemic's still going on to go to Arizona and live in a bubble for 5 months. So you got some problems on that front too. So again, I just think with the major sports, there's such huge complications to try to pull things off without fans. I'm just not sure it's the way to go, and I'm not sure it's the way they will go.
Yeah. Can I get some insight on what changed for you personally, as far as like, what's your day to day? Are you even allowed to go to? I know the paper, the media, that's deemed essential, obviously, but. Are you working strictly from home? Are you going into the office? What's that dynamic like these days for journalists?
I haven't been in the office for about a month, and no one's really been in the office for nobody in sports has been in the office in several weeks. We're all working remotely, all over wherever we live or whatever. I'm not, really covering stories in person. Not that there is many stories to cover in person, so it's basically all being done remotely right now. I leave my house maybe once every other day to go to CVS. That's about it. So I'm in my own bubble here in Oak Park, and that's how it's going to be for a while, it seems.
Yeah. With that said, the newspaper industry has been struggling for a long, long time. Seems to be hanging on. It's tough though. You hear about newspapers closing down all the time, but they still seem to be getting out there. The newspaper industry kind of started to find its way on the internet. Are you Do you think this pandemic is gonna like hurt the newspaper business even more, or could it actually, help it a bit because there's more people at home that are just constantly reading and is are newspapers eventually gonna like die out, like actual printed newspapers, and is it all gonna go to the web? And do you think this situation is helping or hurting that situation somehow?
Well, I don't think newspapers are ever going to die completely, all over the country. But certainly, it's an industry that's lived on rocky times for many, many years. Really, my entire professional adult career has been spent in an era where newspapers have, quote unquote, been a dying industry.
Yeah.
And yet here we are. We're still standing, which I think is great, and I think it's very important. The interesting thing about this pandemic in relation to newspapers is that our readership and MLive's readership and the Free Press's readership, many readerships across the country, have never been greater than they are right now.
Yeah.
Because first, people are home, but there also is a very big thirst for news right now and information. And so, therefore, we are getting absolutely tons of readership, especially online. We had, like 2 weeks ago, I think on a Friday or a Thursday, I can't remember, we had our biggest traffic day at DetroitNews.com ever. DetroitNews.com is well over 20 years old.
Wow.
The traffic that we are generating at this moment, again, because of, one, people are home and looking for something to consume, and two, there's just this great thirst for news and information right now, given the uncertainty that's going on in the world. Our numbers are through the roof. Now, the problem is that the pandemic has shut down many businesses and many industries, and now is starting to naturally and expectedly affected our ads at the news and the Free Press and MLive and newspapers across the state. In that we've had many advertisers basically put their accounts on hold and pull out of advertising for April. So we're getting hit. I mean, us and the Free Press are all taking furloughs, basically one a month for the next 3 months. The Free Press also is getting some pay cuts. MLive is getting some pay cuts and some furloughs. Luckily there have been no announcements of layoffs, but who knows if that'll come down the road. So it's really a sick irony in that we're getting more readership than ever before, and yet we're also going to be suffering a little bit financially as workers taking furloughs and pay cuts and such like that. So how we come out of all this, who knows? I think that the newspaper industry is probably, at least it was before this pandemic, on a little bit more solid footing than it had been, say, during the Great Recession or even a few years ago. But, look, it is what it is. We need newspapers in this country. I hope that people that are sitting at home reading, and checking out all the news, for free at their fingertips will consider that when this is all over, maybe buying a subscription because, now in this country is not the time to be without good journalism. I think it's very important. And so hopefully people will take this and learn from it and subscribe. It doesn't cost much. It's a couple bucks a week to subscribe to your local paper, and it's very important, and I hope people do it. But in the long run, look, there's always going to be a need for good journalism, whether it's actual print product in your hand or all online. Who knows? It'll probably be more and more online as we move on in this world. But as far as newspapers ceasing to exist, that they will never come. There'll always be a need for them in some form, and I think you're seeing that now. And it's an industry that's gritty and tough, and we fight hard and we make sacrifices, and we're still here, and I don't expect that to change anytime soon.
Yeah. So you're in your career, you've seen the journalism business really kind of like change dramatically, and now everybody has the ability to do their own blog, do their own podcast, their own social media, where you can get, like, the average Joe can get access to athletes at an unprecedented rate right now, because you can go on Twitter right now, and like Joe Schmo can go tweet at LeBron James. He may or may not respond, and then the public has become their own sports journalists themselves, and everybody can put their own opinion out there. How have you adapted to being a professional sports journalist in the age of where everybody can put their own opinion out there?
Yeah, it's different. I mean, sure. I mean, when I started in sports journalism back in my first professional job was 2002. So, back then it was such, there was no Twitter, there was no, Instagram, and, blogs were, not what they are now, and there were no podcasts. So it was different. And, you learn to adapt. I've enjoyed the adaptation of journalism. I like the fast-paced style of it now. I like that we can interact with sports fans, which we never, used to be able to really do to this extent. I think that's important, and I think it's led to a lot of good story ideas, and I think it's led to a lot of good content. Conversations I've had with people on Twitter have led to stories, have led to content, have led sometimes to breaking news tips. So, there's some good to it, but there's also some bad in that. I think the biggest thing is that, the spread of misinformation is a huge concern. And not just in sports journalism, but in all of journalism. There's so much, like you said, so much content out there. There's so many Twitter accounts. There's so many blogs. There's so many websites. There are so many podcasts. That, the spread of misinformation is rapid, and I don't want to go on a rant like the president's calling it fake news, because that's not what it is. There is a lot of false information out there, but the mainstream outlets still are pretty accurate. But that's not to take away some stuff from spread from some of the websites and some of the fans and whatever. There are a lot of them out there with very good information and very, very solid reporting, and so I'm not blanketing it, but you definitely have to be a lot more careful now as far as figuring out what's true and what's not. Just because you see it on Twitter, looks like a real account, looks like a legit source, doesn't mean that it necessarily is. So fact checking is as important as it's ever been. But I like the new state of journalism. I think it's fast, it's exciting. There's never, you can log on Twitter and get the whole day's news in 10 minutes, and then log on 15 minutes later and get the rest of the day's news in the next 10 minutes. It's just so evolving. So I like it. I like the excitement of it. I like the fact that it's not just putting out one paper a day and that's it. It's we're putting out a 24-hour paper on our website. The news never stops.
Yeah.
I just think it's exciting. So I like it. And again, I think the biggest thing for me is I really enjoy the fact that we are, not just the athletes, but we are as close to the readers as ever before. And I think that's been a good thing for journalism.
I think that's cool, too. Now, with that said, how do you balance the need to break news immediately versus making sure that you have all the facts?
For me, it's easy. You want the facts first and the credit second. So you got to be right. And there's been times where I have something, I'm pretty sure I have it, I'm almost positive, but, it's just not worth it to go out there and be wrong. Because if you're wrong, your reputation takes a hit. Look, we've all been wrong on certain things. We've all made mistakes. No different there. But you certainly try to be accurate first. You want to beat everybody. I want to beat everybody. I don't want the Free Press to have anything before it. I think it's very important for our paper to be first. But it means nothing if you aren't accurate. And I think unfortunately, I think instances in recent months and years where the Free Press Sports Department has been first with a big story, and it's turned out to be very wrong. And I think that's dangerous, and I think it's a bad look. So, look, we all love breaking news. We all love seeing the term as first reported by so-and-so. It's a point of pride because that's what journalism has always been about. It's about getting information to the public that they haven't seen before, which boils down to scoops, which boils down to, breaking news. Now, in the era of Twitter, it's tougher and tougher to break news because people can break it instantly on Twitter, and who got it first, who got it 5 seconds later, whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, we all want to break the news, but when it comes down to it, if you're not accurate, what's the point?
Yeah. And you've had some major stories in your career. I want to touch on some of those. The first one being Michigan State. You graduated from Michigan State, a Michigan State alum. And can you explain what it was like for you personally to dig deep into a bad situation at Michigan State, knowing that that's your school? Like how tough was that for you as a journalist / Michigan State alum? Like what was that dynamic like for you working on a tough situation at Michigan State?
Yeah, for me, it wasn't really that difficult because, look, we all have a job to do, and I'm going to report on whatever my bosses want me to report on and investigate whatever they want me to investigate on. The way I look at it is, I went to Michigan State. I had a blast there. It's 3 or 4 of the best years of my life. I'll never forget them. Wouldn't have changed going anywhere else. It was the right decision. I loved it. But right now it's a degree. That's all it is. When you become a journalist, you basically have no allegiances, and especially in sports journalism, the one unfortunate thing about being in sports journalism is you lose a lot of the fandom. I used to be a big Tiger fan. That's not really the case anymore. In journalism, takes it out of you, and it's done that with Michigan State, and it's done with anyone who's a sports journalist and their previous college. That's just the way it works. Maybe you become jaded, or maybe you just realize that in the grand scheme of things, you watch enough games, sports aren't all that important. God forbid. But with Michigan State, no, it wasn't difficult to do. It was a story that needed to be written or at least looked into. The story that was fixed for me to watch unfold was the Nasser story. That one really made me embarrassed by my university. I wasn't really part of that coverage. But that, to me, hit harder than me working on a story investigating the football program. So it wasn't difficult. I hear from fans all the time, why are you out to get D'Antonio, or what did MSU do to you while you were there? Nothing. I'm doing a job.
Yeah.
Matt Sharman was my colleague. He went to Michigan State as well. Him and I, and the funny, I'll put it this way. A few years back, I covered Michigan basketball for a year. And while I was on the beat, I got accused of being a Michigan homer, and I got accused of being a Michigan State homer. Almost in equal regard. And if that's the case, I think you're doing something right. If every side thinks you hate him, it's kind of like, every baseball team thinks Ken Rosenthal hates a baseball team, or every baseball team thinks Keith Law hates their prospects. The bottom line is, if everybody hates you, on both sides, then you're probably doing all right.
Do you go out in public and have people verbally assault you? Because they're so mad. Does that happen?
That's never happened, and I don't expect it ever will.
It's all online, because I know you get attacked online. I'm sure.
Exactly. Yeah, it's easy to send off an email, and I get a lot of email, and I respond to almost all of it, even the negative stuff. which, as you can imagine, during the Michigan State story was, the most prevalent amount of email I got was negative. But I'll respond to it. But there's a lot of courage behind the keyboard as opposed to in person. So no, I mean I've never had anything like that. I don't expect I ever will.
Yeah. When you were running now the Michigan State story, now that had unfolded over a period, like a pretty lengthy period of time, right? Like, how did you go through that investigative process? Like, how are you getting? I'm not asking you to reveal your sources or nothing like that, but how are you getting like this inside information? What was the reporting style for you like while digging up the story and putting it out, on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah. Well, it had a couple of good sources that helped from the beginning. So it always helps lay the groundwork. But the one fortunate thing about what I do at the news is that I've covered every sport to some regard and every team to some regard. But in my background, I've also covered politics. I've also covered cops and courts and police work. So I have a well-rounded background. So I have a pretty good idea of how to get information from certain sectors of the public, because again, I've covered not just sports, but politics. And there's obviously a lot of politics that go on in college athletics. And, I've covered cops and courts. I know how to deal with police. I know how to deal with the court system and getting information from them. So, it wasn't any like grand, meet me in the parking garage, the basement of the parking garage, like, all the president's men or anything like that. It wasn't anything like that. It was just, really, I mean, I have enough sources, in a lot of different areas that it just, it all came together. And so, and the result was what it was. Some people liked it, that read it, and some people didn't. But that's the way it is.
Yeah. Another big one that upset a lot of fans was the Miggy story and his secret family. Like, you pretty much broke that story. How did that one go? Because that one really upset because things were riding high. Miggy's beloved, in Detroit, and I guess my question is, for one, and I want to answer this in the most respectful way, why is that information relevant? And two, how did you gather that information about Miggy?
Well, the information dropped in our laps from a source that said it was coming into the courts in Florida. So we got very fortunate in that regard, that we had a source that picked up the phone and alerted us this is coming, and no one else knew it was coming. So we had that. Look, that story took no joy out of me as far as wanting to, not something I wanted to write. I'm, from a family of divorce and family issues growing up. Certainly I'm sensitive to stuff that happens in the family circle. But it's absolutely 100% newsworthy. And for starters, he's a public figure. He is a very public figure in Detroit. And a person who is paid tens of millions of dollars to perform at the highest level as a Detroit Tiger. And if you did some correlation between when all this stuff was going on, the dates, and his slide on the baseball field, his downward trajectory, you could make the case that they were parallel.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, we would have done the story either way, because I will argue forever that if you are a person of very big public interest, your life's an open book, especially when it hits the courts. If you don't want it to be an open book, don't let it hit the courts. It's that simple. Once it hits the courts, it's for everyone to see, and if it wasn't me that broke it, it would have been somebody else, and we would have been following it. The Free Press, just like the Free Press followed us, and MLive, and ESPN, somebody would have had it. When you're a celebrity, you lose a lot of your privacy rights, which is too bad. It's sad. I empathize with a lot of these people, but you know that going in, and so sometimes you adapt accordingly. This stuff hit the courts, and that option was not an option for Miggy at that point.
Yeah, that was some tough stuff for sure. It's right. I mean, for Tiger fans, it was like because you got your heroes, and then like when you see like your heroes exposed, it's tough. It's a tough read. You don't want to read that. You want to think your heroes are perfect. And for you to you're kind of in the medium ground where you're like, hey, man, your heroes, they're not perfect, and I'm the one bringing you the bad news. Like, I bet you got did you get a lot of hate mail during that time as why are you exposing Miggy? What is it your business to expose him? Did you get a lot of negative feedback about that?
Oh, plenty, absolutely. And they were. It was exactly what you said. What you think it was. Whose business is this of yours? This is the public's interest. And I can't remember what movie it was from, but it was an old journalism movie, and I can't remember exactly which one it was off the top of my head. But the line was something along the lines of, the public has a funny way of deciding what is and what is not their business.
That is a great line.
By how much they read a story. And obviously the Miguel Cabrera story was widely read. It was a very big read story. The funny thing is one person who's never said an ill word to me and never treated me any differently over that story was Miguel Cabrera.
Really?
Nope. Never. He always was friendly with me before, and he could be a cantankerous fella. He'd be a little moody. But he's always been very pleasant to me, and that never changed after the story came out. He never talked to me about the story, but he never held it against me. So maybe fans should realize that Miggy wasn't coming after me. I think Miggy will be all right.
Yeah. Man. Wow. All right. Holy smokes. All right. Let's switch it up. There's the one thing I know you. Are you in tune with the biggest sports thing going on right now that is coming is the NFL draft, Lions football. Are you in tune with that? I know your wheelhouse is baseball and golf, I think, and college athletics. But are you in tune with what's going on with the NFL draft right now?
No, not at all.
Do you have any opinions on it?
I'm the worst person for that.
Yeah, all right. Because I'm excited. I want to talk some Lions football, but we can go back to baseball then, because the Tigers, when the baseball does get going back around again, the Tigers are still going to be in rough shape. But these prospects are some of these things like this rebuild. When do you think the Tigers are going to be good again?
When this first all started being torn down a few years ago, I think I said 2021, and now I think 2022 looks a little bit more realistic. And I think it's very realistic. I know a lot of fans will scoff at that because they haven't seen it on the field. But they need to understand the sheer amount of talent that is coming from the minor leagues, especially in the pitching department. No, not every one of these pitchers is going to hit. Not everyone's going to be a sensation. But they don't need all of them to. They need a percentage of them to. And I think that the odds are very good that happens. So I think from the pitching perspective, they're very, very close. And then from a financials perspective, after this year, after 2020, the only contract that's on the books beyond this year is Miguel Cabrera's. And so all of a sudden, there's a lot more financial flexibility. And if you take Chris Ilitch at his word, and that's really all we can at this point, even though, if you're a District Detroit fan still waiting for those hotels and restaurants, office buildings to go up near Little Caesars Arena, I guess you'll be a little bit more skeptical of Chris Ilitch and the Ilitch family. Yeah. But from a sports perspective, he hasn't really had a chance yet to really make a power play as the owner of the Tigers because he took over when the team was on the decline. But if you take him at his word, they say they're going to spend when the time is right. Well, the time might be right just as the time where their books start to open up is seemingly crossing paths with the time when these minor league prospects, so many of these pitching prospects are ready to finally emerge And so therefore, I think it could be kind of perfect timing situation where they're able to go out to the free agent market and get some big offensive players and some young, really good young offensive free agents to go with their young pitching staff and potentially be in the mix in 2022. And I don't think that's that far off, especially in their division. There's no one in their division that is the gold standard of baseball right now.
Yeah.
Nobody looks like they have the brightest of futures in the American League Central. So, from that aspect, the Tigers could certainly, and you see it a lot in the AL Central, where a team will pop up because, again, the competition usually can be so weak. But even taking the AL Central out of it, I just think that the financial flexibility era and the era of the prospects emerging are going to intertwine and soon. And so, therefore, I think if Illich is being honest and he wants to spend money and he wants to be competitive, those days are coming very, very soon. And so I think 2022 could be the tip of the iceberg and as far as them finally breaking through, if not even 2021. I think that would be a little ambitious, but again, not out of the realm of possibility. The one thing about this pandemic is it could end up slowing the progress of some of their pitchers, and so therefore 2022 might be the more realistic, and already probably is the more realistic target date. But I think it's going to happen, and not too far off.
Yeah, and Mr. I had such a huge presence in this town with bringing Stanley Cups with the Wings, and then taking the Tigers too. And us sports fans, we felt the passion that Mr. I had, and he had no problem spending money, no problem getting out the biggest free agents, and everybody wanted a World Series ring for Mr. I. Now, with him passing, there's this narrative that Chris Illich doesn't care about the Tigers. He just wants to sell pizzas and wants to make money, and that they may even sell the team. Where are you on that with do you think I think it's obvious that Chris Illich, I don't think, has the same passion for the Tigers or the want to win a championship as his father did, but are Tiger fans off when they think that he doesn't have that same love that his dad did?
No, I don't think they're off. I mean, look, I don't think anybody loved the Tigers as much as Mike Illich did. I mean, from the time when he was very young, when he was a minor league ball player, to the time when he actually bought the team. I mean, no one loved the Tigers like Mike Illich did. And, so he spent, budget be damned and profit be damned, to try to win that ring. I mean, his passion was unmatched. So, no, I don't think fans are off to say that Chris doesn't have that same intensity to win it. I'm not going to say to win a championship, because I'm sure he desperately wants to win a championship. But I don't think that the business of owning the Tigers burns as deep in him as it did with his father. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. That said, I don't think that there's any question that he would like to win with them, and will make steps to do that. Whether he's going to spend like his father did, who his father didn't really care about profits or budgets or anything when it came down to, trying to put the best product in the field, where I think Chris is going to be a little bit more mindful that it is a business. He is more of a businessman, and, it is a business, and the goal is to make money. I think he's definitely going to focus on that more than his father did. But as far as, his burning desire of his passion, I don't know that we'll really get a direct answer on that until he starts spending money on the Tigers, and then we'll find out. If 2 years go by and you see them not really raising the payroll much, then I think you're going to have your answer. I don't think that that's going to happen. I think he will spend money. But again, it's so new in his ownership tenure, and he was dealt a team that was on the decline that desperately needed to rebuild. Whether fans wanted to see Justin Verlander go or not, it had to be done. So we're about to see now, as this team emerges from the black hole, see if he, has the willingness to put the money where his mouth is. And if he doesn't, then we're going to get a real distinct answer as to what the Tigers need to do.
Yeah. Hey, this is I'm not sure how to ask this question, but okay. In your opinion, like, how much difference is it to own the worst team in baseball versus owning the best team in baseball that just won the World Series financially? If Chris Ilitch is only thinking about the bottom line, how the worst team in baseball is still making money, right?
Oh yeah, the worst team in baseball. Sometimes the worst team in baseball makes the most money, more money than the best team in baseball. So sometimes the team with the lowest payroll, and ends the worst record makes more money because again, there's the revenue sharing and all that stuff. So yeah, you can run a lousy baseball club and make a ton of money still if you want to do it that way. But boy, you're not going to want to go out in public too much.
Yeah. All right. Tony, I wonder, what are your thoughts with the team right now as far as signing free agents versus just bringing up your young talent? Like you said, it's widely known that some of these trades are that we traded stars away for prospects. Some of them are working out, some not. But it seems like the farm system is pretty loaded with pitchers, but position players we're not really seeing some potential stars there. Where do you think the team is at right now in their prospects with the pitching versus the positional players?
Well, it goes back to what I said about when they start spending money. Because it's the case with a lot of, there's no team in baseball for the most part, at all really. Yeah, even those Yankees teams of the '90s, okay, that had the core four, right? They weren't 100% homemade. They were still built on the back of free agents, okay, but their roots were homegrown. So you're not going to have a thing with the Tigers where every position and starting player that comes up is going to be homegrown. It's just not realistic. Yeah. What you want is to have a solid foundation and then be able to use free agency to complement that. And it just so happens, I think the Tigers will be able to do that. It just so happens that all their homegrown could very well be in the pitching department where they complement it completely with free agency among the position players. I think that's what they might be looking at right now. I mean, they might have a couple position players out there that right now that might look to be future starters with this organization. I think Jacoby Jones still has a possibility. I think Nico Goodrum has a possibility to get someplace, some extent. But for the most part, they're going to have to build their free agency. You look at the minors, you got a guy like Riley Green. He could be up in a couple of years.
Yeah.
But for the most part, they're going to have to use their free agency on position players, which that's okay because, again, no championship team is built entirely homegrown or entirely on the back of free agency. It's a mixture. You want to have good roots with the homegrown, and I think the Tigers with their pitching have the potential to do that. So I don't think it's a big problem that they don't have a ton of position prospects. I just think that'll be the area of need that they focus on when they do start spending again, which again could be as early as next offseason.
Yeah, where are you at with Justin Verlander? Obviously, a guy who is a hero in Detroit, legend, traded to Houston. Now he's part of the scandal. Was a guy who was real out front, with the baseballs being loaded, and he always would talk, but then kind of radio silent with the scandal that he kind of got thrown into. Really, where should Tiger fans feel? What do we feel about JV right now? Because he was our guy, man. He was our guy, and then a lot of people became Astros fans just to see JV get the ring, and now the ring is tainted. So, what's your thoughts on JV right now?
Well, I'm not one to tell Tiger fans what they should think of JV. I get their sentiments. I mean, look, Justin Verlander is
Yeah.
I mean, unbelievable. Regular season no hitters. There was a time where every time he started, it was you were texting people, did he give up a hit yet?
Yeah.
Like every start. I mean, remember those 2 years?
Must see JV, man.
Start. Yeah, it was. I mean, he would get into the 4th inning and people would already be talking about no hitter because that's how dominant he was. So regular season was amazing, but then postseason, those back-to-back starts in back-to-back years to close out the A's in deciding games.
Yeah.
It was amazing. And so Tiger fans should love him. If they loved him then, they should love him now. That's fine. I get it, and I understand why they wanted to see him get the ring. Tiger fans kind of lived vicariously through Verlander. They knew that their World Series wasn't coming anytime soon. The time had passed, and so they kind of lived through Verlander a little bit there. So that's fine. Tiger fans have all the. I don't blame them one bit for what they feel about Verlander. As far as Verlander, my opinion, yeah, he comes across as a hypocrite. He knew this cheating was going on, but yeah, he's always been outspoken about sign stealing and steroids, and he was really, he went off on domestic violence, which was great. He went off on domestic violence in sports, a few years back, and then the Astros traded for that reliever. It was the same thing. It was the silence from him, and it's just, it's hypocritical. If you're going to be someone who takes a stand, you got to take a stand, whether it's a good thing for you or not, And he hadn't done that, and he took way too long to come out and address this situation. He never really fully addressed it. Kind of dismissed questions about it. So, from my perspective, he's a little bit hypocritical. But look, his Tiger career, that was some of the most entertaining baseball that we'll ever see in our lifetimes, and he was a big, big, big reason why. And you can't take that away from Tiger fans. Nor would you want to. Those are great memories.
Absolutely. And then another player, absolute legend. I know that you have gotten to know him throughout the years, but Al Kaline passed away recently. Like Mr. Tiger. Can you just touch on maybe what it was like getting to know Al Kaline and spending time with him throughout the years?
Yeah, I didn't get to know him quite as well as other journalists did. I did interview him many times, and several times, and he knew I knew who he was, obviously. But anytime you got a chance to talk to him, or anytime, he'd come in the clubhouse and just be standing near the entryway, and he'd be checking your notes or something, and Al would walk in, and with a big smile, and he'd pat you on the shoulder and whatever. I mean, it was just a surreal moment, because this guy, he's Mr. Tiger. There's Mr. Hockey, there's Mr. Tiger. Ironically, not ironically, I guess, makes sense that Gordie Howe and Al Kaline were such good friends.
Yeah.
Now both are gone, which is so sad. But, he was just, a treasure. And, the one thing I tell people about him is that he was so great. This surprises people, but and I put this in the obituary that I wrote, in that he signed thousands and probably hundreds of thousands of autographs throughout the years, but he never really liked signing autographs, and it wasn't because of the fans. He loved the fans. It was because he was so shy, and so having crowds of people around him just didn't sit well because he was so shy. And he didn't understand what all the fuss was about him. He was a very humble person. But if you got Kaline alone one-on-one in intimate settings, over a drink or a dinner or even just passing in the hallway, and it was just one-on-one, he's so connected, and he's just the best person. And those memories, the memories that I got from fans who had encounters with Kaline over the years, and I got a bunch of them in my email box last week, all their stories were about one-on-one encounters. Because that's where he shined. Because he was so shy. But when it was just you and me, just you and him, he was so good.
Yeah.
And so many of those stories are because of it. So, that's kind of what I wasn't old enough to watch him play. I was barely old enough, for the most part, to watch him in his heyday at broadcasting. I certainly remember George and Al. But, I was still young at the time. But for me, getting to, see him and then hear the stories from people that knew him growing up and in the old days. What a swell man! I mean, you have a hard time finding anybody to say anything negative about him, and B, you have a hard time finding anything he did wrong in his life. Like, in this era of sports where, everything is documented in the paper.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd hard pressed to know, you'd hard pressed to believe that Al Kaline ever got a parking ticket. And if he did, we don't know about it. So it's just a tremendous guy. And, it was, it's just such a treat to be able to walk in the Tigers clubhouse. There's a living legend. And he's just reading the newspaper and drinking a cup of coffee. And the players loved him. The young players gravitated toward him. He loved helping the young players. He never stopped working for the Tigers from the day he signed as a bonus baby for $35,000 in 1953 until the day he died. He never stopped working for that organization. Think about that. And he wasn't a token role in the front office. He was a guy who knew baseball better than anybody, and his opinion was heard, and he made sure it was heard. And as Al Avila kind of hinted at, Kaline kind of became their ambassador for the last several years, where he had to meet a player to decide if that player should be a Tiger or not. Yeah, whether it'd be a good fit. You had to pass the Mr. Kaline test, and so just a tremendous loss. I saw him last summer. He didn't look quite right. I think he might have had some health issues last summer. Because Al Kaline, this is what I tell people too, Al Kaline has looked 70 years old for 15 years. I mean, he hasn't aged, for the last 15 years. He's looked great for his age. So when you see things that are off, you start to wonder if something's wrong. And last summer, he didn't look right. And so I wonder if he had some issues last summer. And then you started hearing rumblings about this winter and this spring, about some health complications. So it's very sad. But man, what a legacy, right? When he leaves in Detroit, 67 years, such an impact on the organization. And this is a guy who won a World Series here in Detroit as a player. He broadcast the World Series as a player, or as a broadcaster, and then as a front office guy, he was just as happy in '06 when they clinched to get to the World Series as he was when he was a player. If you look at those pictures, him hugging Pudge Rodriguez, I mean, he was just as happy and excited about that as he was for his own team in 1968. So a tremendous loss for baseball. And I hope that we can, I hope we do get baseball back at some point this year so the Tigers can give him a proper and fitting farewell.
That would be nice. And then we got last year, we got finally some due for some old Tigers. Jack Morris and Alan Trammell getting to the Hall of Fame. You probably have talked to those guys quite a bit. What about Lou Whitaker? Like, do you think his time is due as well to get into the Hall of Fame?
Oh yeah, I mean his time, like Alan Trammell's time, was 20 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely.
These are two of the best at their position in the history of baseball. Any statistical measure, traditional, new school, analytical, sabermetric, will tell you that. And it's a disgrace that Trammell had to wait 20 years, essentially 21 or whatever it was, to make the Hall of Fame via the Veterans Committee, but at least he made it. It was doubly disgraceful that Lou Whitaker didn't even make it off the first ballot when he was on with the writers. I mean, this is a guy whose numbers are up there with, the best second baseman of all time. I mean, he could hit for power, he could hit for average, he could field, he could run. This guy was, he was excellent, and he's an absolute Hall of Famer. And I thought, okay, they screwed up with the writers. It happens. Sometimes that happens. Ted Simmons was off the ballot in one time as well, and he made the Hall of Fame this past year with the writers' ballot, so they fixed that. Okay, but I just assumed that the Veterans Committee would be able to make amends for that this year, and they didn't. And I don't understand what you need to see about Lou Whitaker's career to understand that he should be in the Hall of Fame. A lot of people would say he's more deserving of the Hall of Fame than Trammell. I wouldn't go that far. I'd put them on dead even footing because to me their careers are dead even.
That's what I'm saying. It's the two of them together. They should have gone into the Hall of Fame together. Like their plaque should be the two of them turning a double play together.
It would have been nice. And, a couple things prevented, a couple things might have hurt their candidacy. One, Lou Whitaker retired 1 year before Trammell did. And so what that did was it put him on the Hall of Fame ballot for the first time in separate years. I think if they retired together and gone on the Hall of Fame ballot at the same time, I think that would have been more eye-opening for the writers to see them together, because everyone's so used to seeing them together. And when you tear them apart, it just doesn't stand out as much. So I think that hurt them. And then again, when they came out with the Veterans Committee ballot 2 years ago and they put Trammell and Morris on there, they didn't put Whitaker on there. And I could not get an answer why from anybody who worked on that committee ballot, but that made no sense. So the fact that they've never been up for election at the same time has definitely hurt, because so many outside of Detroit just lump them together as this one piece, and when you see them apart, they just don't seem to be as excellent. Whereas in Detroit, we all know how excellent both of them were, even separately, as opposed to together. So I hope Whitaker gets in next time, but this time was a big blow for him. I don't know that he will. He might be just one of those guys that some people just don't understand. But I mean, how you can look at Lou Whitaker and say he's not a Hall of Famer is just mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, I agree with that. Speaking of the Hall of Fame, times are changing in sports right now. The steroid era has pretty much come and gone in baseball. Where are you at as far as the Hall of Fame with guys like Barry Bonds and Mark McGwire? Do you think that the steroid stuff should kind of be forgiven? And where are you at with Pete Rose? Is it time to let Pete Rose just get his due and get into the Hall of Fame as well?
I'll start with the last one first. Absolutely not. Pete Rose should never be in the Hall of Fame, and I'm never going to change my response on that. He broke the most cardinal rule in baseball, which is you don't bet on baseball. He did bet on baseball. He lied about it for 20 years. He only admitted it when he was putting a book out. So that just tells you all you need to know about Pete Rose. Yeah. And he continued to say to this day, that he only bet on his team to win, which, even if that's the case, and you're only betting on your team to win, you still make decisions then that affect the team in future games. That's a problem. Plus, if you know any degenerate gamblers or people who've had gambling problems who are deep in the hole, they're going to do what it takes to win. And so I don't believe for one second that Pete Rose didn't bet on his team to lose. So for me, Pete Rose is a lost cause. He's never owned up to it, or he finally owned up to it, but again, only to sell a book. He's never shown regret over it. Look, he broke the cardinal rule, and I have no sympathy whatsoever for Pete Rose. So that's my answer on that. As far as the others and the steroid guys, I was hardcore against them for a while. Clemens more so than Bonds I was against, because I felt like Clemens' career was over in a lot of ways before he took steroids, and then he had this massive rebound, where I felt like Barry Bonds was already on the trajectory toward a Hall of Fame career before he took the steroids. So I justified it in my mind that I'd vote for Bonds and not Clemens. But now I've kind of come around that, look, there's got to be people in the Hall of Fame right now that are steroid users that we just don't know about, and they just didn't get caught. And so therefore, I'm of the opinion that, if these guys are great players, they need to go in. And I certainly think that Bonds and Clemens are generational players and certainly the best of their era. And so now I've come around that I voted in.
Yeah.
I don't think they're not going to get in, though. I mean, their numbers are way too low. It's not going to happen. But.
Is that something you think that maybe down the line, 20 years from now, that it could be like a Trammell type situation where the second wave, like, they could get in that way? Do you think that as time continues to pass, that more people will feel like you, and that everything will be eased up on these guys? Because Bonds right now, I know he feels like he's a villain, like he's he's being like attacked when he shouldn't be, and that's crazy to me, because he cheated. He did cheat the game. These guys that use the steroids, they did cheat the game. But the thing is, like, it wasn't detected, and I don't know. It's hard for me, but I do think as time eases on, it'll become less of an issue, and I think they might eventually get in. But I think it's going to be 10, 20 years from now. Like, I think more time has to keep going, but that's not going to help these guys like Bonds and Clemens who feel like, they're victims now. Like, and does that make sense to you? Do you think Bonds has a good approach of being he shouldn't be a villain?
Well, Bonds was a dick.
Yeah.
So, he was a dick when he was playing. He was a dick after he was playing. So he wasn't nice to anybody. And then all of this stuff with the steroids. So screw Barry Bonds and what he thinks. Yeah, he is looked at as a villain because he's not a very nice person. Whatever, He was a great baseball player. I've come around on him. A lot of others haven't. But the Veterans Committee is not going to be really much of an option for them because the Veterans Committee is made up of current Hall of Famers, Hall of Fame players, Hall of Fame executives, and they're staunchly opposed to these guys getting in. Yeah. So I don't see any chance if these guys don't get in on the writers' ballot. We only got a couple more cracks at it, and they're nowhere close to the 75%. Yeah. I don't see them ever getting in.
Yeah. Do you think that that era should be still revered and celebrated? Because you remember the when it was McGuire and Sosa going for the home run chase, and then when Bonds, when he did every day, man, you would be watching a basketball game or something, and they'd cut into Barry Bonds. Barry Bonds is up, so the game you were watching got cut into Barry Bonds is up for a home run. Should that stuff? But then it all comes out. Oh, it's all steroids or whatever. Blah blah blah. Is that? Do you still think that that's a black cloud over baseball, or should that time still be celebrated because at the time it was so freaking exciting?
It was amazing at the time. The McGuire-Sosa home run chase was some of the most exciting times in sports that I can remember. I remember going to Wrigley Field that year to see the Cubs and Cardinals play late in the season, and just every at-bat that one of them was up, it was mayhem, and it was exciting. It was artificial. That's the problem. So I have a hard time celebrating those eras and those accomplishments because they were artificial. Now, it may sound like I'm being hypocritical to what I'm saying about I would vote Clemens and Bonds in because you don't know who else was doing it. I do believe there were a lot of people in the era that were doing steroids, and pitchers included. And so a lot of the whole era to me it's a stink bomb. Looking back on it, it was a fun at the time, but I don't look back fondly on it, and I know a lot of fans don't either. And so I don't know. I guess to each their own. I was watching it like everybody else. It was exciting at the time, but when the curtain was pulled back on that whole thing, it was a pretty gross feeling.
Yeah. What's worse, the Houston Astros and they're banging on garbage cans and sign stealing, the steroid era, or like Pete Rose cheating in or the gambling, like the Black Sox, from 1919. As far as baseball goes, what's the worst thing?
Well, they're all really bad for many different reasons. They're all very different.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you this, that any player will tell you that what the Astros did was the worst.
Really?
Because it creates such an advantage. If you tell a hitter, now we know the Astros didn't do this every game. They didn't do it on the road. But if you ask a pitcher, or if you ask a hitter, a star hitter, if he knew exactly what was coming every pitch, I'm telling you, we've had dozens and dozens of guys hitting 400 or better a year. Not kidding you. Pitchers believe that. Former pitchers have told me, look, it's only to a steroid guy, at least I had a chance. Throw it to a guy who knows what's coming, I have no chance.
Yeah.
And so that's why if you ask most players, they'll tell you that the time stealing was the worst. And so I'll go with that. They're all bad. The steroids, steroid era really put a dark, really an asterisk type of whole game of baseball. The gambling is it's unacceptable because if you don't have the trust of the public, you don't have anything. If you lose the trust, you got nothing. So gambling is horrible as well. But if you ask the players, they'll tell you the time stealing is probably the worst because it created
Do you think that Houston's championship should be taken away? And how would you even do that? Like, did you like if like, and the other thing is, why didn't the players get? You had coaches and the general manager got fired, but no players actually got in trouble with it. So, like, should the players have gotten in trouble, and should that whole championship just be wiped out?
Should the players have gotten in trouble? Absolutely. But you have to understand, Major League Baseball players have the strongest union on the planet. And if any punishment came down, you think the UAW is a powerful union. You haven't seen anything. Because in Major League Baseball, it gets what it wants. And so if any punishments came down toward any players, these things would be tied up in appeals, and it would just be an absolute mess. So the players are never going to get punished for this. It just wasn't realistic, fairly or unfairly. As far as taking away the championship, yeah, I think they probably should have it taken away. It's a fraudulent championship, which is too bad because that Astros team is a great team. But it's fraudulent. There's no question about that. As far as what you do with it, you can't give it to the Dodgers. I mean, you'd have to do what you do. If you did it, you'd have to do what they do in college basketball, where if you vacate a title like Louisville did in 2013, you just don't give it to Michigan.
Yeah,
it's a vacant title. You don't give it to the team that lost, and nor do I think the team that lost would really wholly accept it anyway.
Well, they I know what was it, the city council or something in L.A. tried to like do a lawsuit or and like sue Major League Baseball to get the title. Like, wait, was that just for some showmanship or something, or like what do you think that was? Or
that wasn't gonna happen. No.
Yeah.
Just for headlines.
Yeah, I know. Just say they're still salty, and I mean I would be too, because like I'm a huge Michigan fan, and I like that title in 2013. Yeah, man, that was a great game, and I still think Michigan got robbed in that game, let alone that.
Oh, they did. They did robbed, but I don't think there's a whole lot of Michigan fans that would overly celebrate being handed the title because Louisville had it vacated. It just doesn't have the feeling to it. It feels hollow. It feels empty, and so. I just don't think that that's the way to go about it. If you take it away from the Astros, I think you just vacate it.
Yeah. So going back to Verlander, we feel like that championship should be vacated, and that's Verlander's ring. Like, and a lot of people said, man, what he really needed to get over the hump to be like considered one of the greats of all time was that World Series ring. What do we do? What do we do with Verlander right now? He's still our hero, but man, like, is his ring is invalid? Like, so
his ring is tainted. But I would never was one that thought that Verlander had to get a World Series to be considered one of the best of all time. I mean, he's a legend. He's well on his way to the Hall of Fame. He won the Rookie of the Year. He's won two Cy Youngs. He's won an MVP. I mean, he's going to challenge. If he stays healthy, he could challenge Nolan Ryan's strikeout record, which would be unthinkable.
Yep.
He's very similar to Nolan Ryan in that regard. Nolan Ryan never won a World Series. Well, I guess he did with the Mets, but not in his prime.
Yeah.
But Nolan Ryan never even won a Cy Young. And is considered one of the greatest pitchers of all time. And I think Verlander's in the same boat. That he doesn't need a whole lot more to really validate his career. At least not to me. I mean, what he's done, what he did in his prime with the Tigers, and then how he's bounced back since then. He's as dominant as ever. And I mean, he's he could probably retire tomorrow and get in a couple more years for sure. He'd be a lock. I don't think the World Series ring definitely is tainted, but his career's not.
Is he a first ballot Hall of Famer?
If he pitches another 3 years, I think he is for sure. Yeah. I mean, you look at him. I mean, you'd be hard pressed to name a more dominant pitcher in his era. I mean, it's really him and Max Scherzer. Clayton Kershaw would be up there too, but Clayton's had the injury issues a little bit more. I think, a couple more years, I think it's a slam dunk.
How crazy is it to think about that rotation that the Tigers had with Verlander, Scherzer, Price, Porcello, and then Anibal? Sanchez, and I think they all five of them have a ring now, right?
They do. All five of them have a ring now. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah,
man.
it was incredible what they had, and it was so much fun to watch. It was just really remarkable that team got swept by the Baltimore Orioles with that rotation. But baseball is a funny game, and by funny I mean sometimes cruel.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fans found that out in 2013.
Yeah, that's got to go down with some of the hardest, probably the hardest. I mean, when Benoit delivered that grand slam home run, man. You got, I think it was Torrey Hunter fell over the wall. Like, some of the most heartbreaking things in Detroit sports history for sure, man. That and like Sheed not blocking Big Shot Bob in Game 5 of the NBA Finals back then. I didn't because that team that 2013 team was super good, like historically good.
That team was as good if not better than the '84 team.
Yeah.
And I'll argue that during this whole era of Tigers comeback baseball, no team was nearly as good as the 2013 team, and it was one pitch that changed everything. And if the Tigers win Game 2, they win the World Series that year, and you can't convince me otherwise. But that's the beauty and sometimes the ugliness of sports. That crazy things happen, and it certainly happened that night in Boston.
Yeah. So I got one last question for you. I kind of want to round up this interview. Again, thank you so much, man. I'm having a great time talking to you. And I want to just kind of wrap this up with you being in this, being right there in the thick of things for like the last 12 years as a sports writer for the news. You've seen a lot of good things and a lot of bad things. And like Detroit sports, it's in such a decline right now. It's so depressing. But you were there for a lot of the great things, and you've progressively been seeing this downturn. What should Detroit sports fans be excited for next? I mean, obviously, like as time passes and live sports get going again, but what should Detroit sports fans really start looking forward to? What do you think is the next bright spot? What team is going to break out? Who's going to be a team that Detroit fans can really get behind because things are on the upswing for them?
Yeah. Detroit City FC, the soccer team. How about that?
There you go.
They'll appreciate that I gave them a mention here. But in all seriousness of the major sports, yeah, it's rough right now. I've never seen anything like this in my lifetime with how poorly all the teams are, but I look at it, like I said, I just don't think the Tigers are that far off. And again, some of it is an unknown. And there's that word again. It just seems to be the most popular word right now with everything we're going through. It's unknown. But with the Tigers, it is. Because they have the farm system to build a foundation. We're going to find out the commitment from Chris Ilitch. If the commitment's there, I believe that team is the next to be back. And I think it could be as early as 2021, maybe, and more likely 2022. I really believe that. These pitchers they have in the minors, and it's not just Casey Mize, and it's not just Alex Vallejo, and it's not just Tariq Skubal and Bo Burrows. There are more and more and more of these guys. They have built a big-time stable of arms that they can tap into, which not only helps the rotation, but it helps the bullpen. You're going to see some guys that you think should be starters are going to be in the bullpen because there's just no room.
Yeah.
That's how deep they are. So if they take advantage of their budget outlook, which is really good after this year, and start to go out and get those foundational pieces, who knows? Mookie Betts, somebody like that, another couple guys. If they go out and they do that next offseason and the offseason after, because you got to remember, it's a process. The 2006 Tigers were not built in 2005. They were built when Pudge signed in 2004, and then Maglio signed in 2005, and then Kenny Rogers and Todd Jones signed in 2006. It's a process. So I think you're going to start to see that process kind of kick into effect creation-wise this offseason and continue in the next offseason. And I think that if done right, and if the commitment from Ilitch is really there, I think they're next. And then after that, I would have to say, and I'm not much of a hockey fan or an expert, I've become more of a fan in recent years, I didn't understand the sport growing up, so I never really gravitated toward it. But I'm starting to try to learn. Now that the Wings are in that new arena, I try. When they were playing it, I'd get off work around 6 and I'd go watch some games just to kind of check it out, and I become more interested in it. But with Steve Eisenman, you have to believe that the turnaround is going to happen at some point. I mean, his credentials are just too strong to believe otherwise. So I would think that the Red Wings would be after that, and then the Lions, and then the Pistons just kind of seem rudderless, with no direction. They're trying to make the playoffs, but they're trying to build toward the future. But which one is it? Sometimes when you're in that middle ground trying to do both, it doesn't really work. And that's why you see so many teams that win championships. Just a few years earlier, they were at the bottom of the bottom, building things back up.
You look at Golden State and the NBA, man, what they did, that was incredible.
Yeah, I just think, with the Pistons, they just seem like they're directionless. They don't really know which way to go, and if you don't have a direction, you're going to have a hard time working your way up. So I would put them at the bottom of the list. But I think Tigers, honestly, if done right, and with some shrewd moves by Illich and Avila, I think that it might not be that far off.
Yeah.
So who knows? It might be 15 years before they win again, but I'll be wrong. I've been wrong before, but I just have, I have a strong belief in the prospects that they have stockpiled on the pitching side. And again, they have so many of them that they don't need all of them to hit.
Yeah.
Because in baseball, not all your prospects will hit. But they have enough where they can, if a percentage of them do, and they make the right moves free agent-wise, then this thing's going to get turned around, and it could be really soon.
Hell, I hope, because I just want can somebody get into the playoffs and win a playoff series, win a playoff game, something. We need some glory back. This is Detroit sports. We're not last. We're not losers over here, man. This is the greatest sports town in America, and we're just getting dumped on day after day, man. We need our teams to win, man. We deserve it.
Yeah, well, like I said, it won't last forever, and I think some teams are pretty close.
I hope so. Well,
I just want sports in general. We just need any sports right now.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, you ain't kidding about that. I'm getting real tired of watching games from 2013, man. Whatever I could find what's on. Oh, I know. So, well, we're gonna get through this. We're all getting through it together, and hopefully soon. We just gotta stay patient, I guess, and just try to stay healthy and positive, and eventually things will get back to the way they're supposed to be. So.
That's the goal.
But Tony, listen, I want to thank you again so much for taking the time here to talk with me. You got a lot of good insight, and I just hope you keep doing great work there at the Detroit News.
Oh, hey, that's the goal. And, hey, I really appreciate you asking me to come on. And, I really enjoyed it. And, everyone's going through so much, with work and stuff like that. I hope everyone can just get through this time together, and we'll be back normal soon enough. But this was fun to talk sports with you. I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. Hey, you know what? There is one more thing. We are friends on Facebook, and I noticed because I work at a restaurant. Well, I used to work at a restaurant. I know you have there's a fundraiser that you're part of, that you're supporting as far as restaurant workers. Can you talk about that real quick?
Yeah, it's there's so many fundraisers out there right now, and people are being inundated by them, and so it's kind of tough. But I kind of came up with the idea of just look, I go out to the bars and I go out to dinner a lot, and I have so many friends that are bartenders and are waiters and waitresses, and just restaurant workers. This is hitting them as hard as anybody, and they're kind of a little bit of a forgotten industry by a lot of people, and so. I just came up with the idea that, if we do little by little, that's kind of the name of the fundraiser is little by little. And the purpose was, or the idea was, if you go out to the bar, typically spend, buy 2 drinks, 2 Bud Lights, spend $12 or whatever, consider donating it to this cause. If you can, we're certainly not asking people who are out of work to donate. We understand there's a lot of people out of work. But if you're able, and you can, donate $12 or $20 or $5 or whatever it is, and then this money is passed passed along right to bartenders that we know and servers, in small increments. We can't pay their mortgages, but we can give them $100 here, to kind of, go get some groceries or go pick up that prescription or whatever it is. And we've been able to help a lot of people so far, and we've got a lot more that we're going to. We've raised, I think we've raised close to $3,000 now.
Oh, wow.
Which isn't, it's not $1 million, but it's not nothing either. And, it's still, like I said, little by little, it's helping some people, at least get through the day, and get through the week or whatever it may be. And so if you're able to help, I mean, I had a pin on my Twitter page, Tony Paul 1984. It's also on Facebook. The fundraiser is called Little by Little, and it's basically to help our servers and waiter friends. And we're doing the best we can. Like I said, we know there's a lot of fundraisers out there. I've donated to a bunch of them. If pick your cause. If you're able to, pick your cause and help. This is a cause that is pretty dear to journalists because we love to eat and we love to drink. And so, a lot of our friends are hurting right now. And so this is a way to, at least in some small way, help out some people. And so far it's going well. And the people on both ends are, people are really willing to help and interested in helping. And the people that are receiving the money are very grateful. Like I said, we're not paying mortgages here, but we can help you with groceries. We can help you with prescriptions, whatever it is. Do our little part anyway while this whole thing's going on. And then when we can get back to the bars, we'll be glad to tip you like crazy because we all want to get back to those bars.
Absolutely. As a person that loves to go to the sports bar and watch games, and as a person that, I make my living, waiting tables, man, like myself, I'm a little nervous about this whole deal. Even when when we're allowed to go outside and start going to restaurants, it's going to be tough because that money that stream's not going to be there because people aren't going to be just walking out their houses and going right to restaurants as soon as this thing breaks. So it's a tough thing for us.
Yeah, it's going to be a gradual thing. It's not going to happen overnight. They're not going to flip the switch and it's all going to start up again. And I'm sure but I think the one good thing is I think bars and restaurants are going to be among the first industries to really get open again. And I think, but I think it's going to be obviously with limited capacity. Like if a bar had capacity for 100, it's probably going to be now for the time being 40 or 50, or whatever it may be. So things are going to be different. But I think that those industries are going to be among the first to get back to business. And I'll tell you, once they do, we're all itching to go eat and drink. So I wouldn't worry about that revenue stream being there because I think that of all the industries that we miss, it's good restaurant food and good beers.
Yeah.
I think that once the green light is there, I think that industry is going to get a big boost, and I think it'll come back.
Yeah, I hope so.
But I hope you hang in there, and enjoy the podcast. I appreciate you having me on, and this was fun.
Oh man, it's been great. And hopefully we can do it again once things kick up, man. Once baseball gets back, I'd love to talk to you again. But for now, stay safe. And on behalf of the Detroit Sports Sit Down, thanks for taking the time. And like I said, I hope you just stay safe and healthy out there.
All right, very good. You too. And yeah, I look forward to doing it again when there's actually some games to talk about.
Can't wait, Tony.
All right, man.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.